The radial arm saw. As with any of the tools and machines in the shop, you want to operate those only after you've received the instructor's permission and full instruction on the safe use of the machine. You want to take care of jewelry, rings, watches, necklaces, anything loose that could be hanging off your body and become a hazard with the machine. You also want to take care of loose clothing, anything that's baggy, tucked in, and taken care of. Your hair should be out of your eyes and tied back if it's longer. And you want to make sure everything's ready to go. We have several things with the radial arm saw. We have some marking pencils we're going to need to use to mark our length. We have a tape measure that's ready to go. We have our board here as our sample. It's ready to cut. The radial arm saw is going to be the first step in the squaring process. When we pull lumber from the other side, the construction lab, we'll bring it over to the radial arm saw and we're going to start the process. The first thing you're going to do is make a cut with the radial arm saw. You're going to measure and mark your board 1 inch extra in length than what you need. If you need a 30-inch board, you're going to cut that board at 31 inches, just to make sure that at the end you can go back and trim it down to actual size when it's square. With the machine, you want to make sure all guards are in place and operating properly. We have the leaf guards on this side. As you pull it forward, they lift up and out of the way. There's also a metal guard on the inside of the blade to protect both sides from anything hitting it there. And we have our kickback fingers right here that we can adjust, bring down to the surface of the wood. As you pull that across, if something would catch and try to kick forward, those kickback fingers keep it from kicking the whole way out. We also have our safety glasses, which you're going to have in place on your face. From the time you walk in the door until we are done cleaning up, you want to keep those on to protect your eyes. Okay? With the radial arm saw, we use this machine to make our first cut and also to trim to final length. You want to make sure that we're not really adjusting the radial arm saw and changing the angles or anything, because we want a nice square cut and we want it to stay that way. Okay? When we bring our board over, when we make that cut, if you look at the end of the board, there may be a little bit of an arch at the end of the board. That is called the cup. The cup we want to be down. Okay? If we set the board cup down, it's fairly solid. But if we flip that over, it may rock back and forth. And as you cut, if you cut into that board and it rocks, it may cause a kickback on the machine. So we want to take care of that. When you're using the radial arm saw, your hands are always going to be at least 6 inches away from the blade as it's running. Your right hand is going to be on the handle at all times when using this machine. And the start button on the front up here, you'll use your left hand to start and turn the blade on. This start button is a little bit different. You actually pull the edge out and that starts the machine. Okay, we'll get to that here in just a second. When cross-cutting, we want to hold the material securely against the fence. The fence is the board along the back of the table here, and there's a gap where the cut's going to take place. You want to make sure that your board goes the whole way across that gap to the second fence, because if not, that small piece can get pulled back and it could kick back or get wedged into the machine or go up through our dust collector. The dust collector back here, we have our blast gate, which you pull that open and that will pull all the sawdust up through and keep the area clean. I'm going to leave that off right now just so you can easily hear the presentation, because that gets pretty loud. Okay, so we have our material. We're going to push it back against the fence. It's tight against both fences. When we're ready to go, we want to pull the blade through the work and return it to the back of the table when we are done. When we pull that forward, we're going to stop just after it's cut through the material. You don't want to pull the whole way out, because the gap that you just cut could actually, with the vibration, it could close, and when you try to push it back, the saw could get stuck or kick that piece out. Okay? So we're going to pull that forward. When I cut, I stand over to the left side. My right hand is on the machine right here. My left hand is out of the way, okay? Probably at least a foot, if not a little bit more. And I'm going to slowly pull that through, keeping a stiff arm, my right arm, just so you have control of that blade. It wants to run forward a little bit, so you just have to keep a little bit of tension on there. Okay, so I'm going to start that up and I'm going to make my cut. I'm going to start it. Left hand out of the way. And keep your right hand on there holding the handle until the blade has come to a complete stop. I pulled it forward. When standing off to the left side, I can easily see where that blade is cutting, and I can see when it's cut the whole way through. So as soon as it has, I push it back the whole way, stop it, keep my left hand out of the way until everything is stopped. Your scrap piece that you cut is going to go into our scrap bin right over here. Okay? And you're always checking to make sure you don't see any cracks or splits in the board, especially when you cut the rough end of the board off. You're going to cut one end off just to trim it up when you first bring it over, and then you flip it around and take your measurement plus 1 inch. Okay? Make sure that you are always using the radial arm saw to cross cut. You're going across the board. We never want to put the board in like this and cut with the grain. We don't want to rip through that piece. We want to cross cut with the radial arm saw. And make sure the blade is stopped before leaving the machine. Okay? The major things to remember, okay, right hand on the machine at all times. Once you start it up, your left hand is out of the way. Okay, make the cut fully, push it back, stop it, keep your hands out of the way, and hold on to it until it's come to a complete stop. Okay, again, once you're done, we have a nice clean cut on the end of our board, and it's ready to go to the next machine, the jointer.